open the pod bay doors.
Greetings and welcome to another exciting episode of the Cinematic Traveler Podcast. I am your intrepid movie-exploring host, Chris, and on this episode, I am going to be bringing you my review for one of the most romantic films I've seen in a long time, and that would be Heart Eyes, directed by Josh Rubin. I mean, come on, what single person wouldn't love a good slasher movie all about that Hallmark holiday, St. Valentine's Day? I'm excited to talk about it, but before I do, if I can just ask you a favor, whatever you're listening to the show on, somewhere on that screen is a follow button. If you could please tap that follow button, I would appreciate it. It does help me and the show, but it also helps you. You will get any future reviews, as well as having access to all of my previous episodes with my amazing reviews and my sexy, sexy voice. Also, if you could leave a rating and a review, I'd appreciate that as well. Share the show with anybody and everybody on your social media. That would be great too. You can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at Cinematic Traveler Pod. I'm on Twitter at CMT Pod and Blue Sky at Cinematic Traveler something. And I also have an email address, thecinematictravelerpod@gmail.com. So you have plenty of ways to follow the show and get in touch with yours truly. So there, I got through that quick, fast, and in a hurry so we could get into this episode. I hope you're doing well out there, my beloved listener. I know we are going to talk about it a bit in this review, but yes, we are heading into that dreaded day of the year if you are flying solo on this planet. But you know what? This year you've got me, so you won't be flying solo this year. You can always listen to this episode, previous episodes. You can have a marathon through this Valentine season. And if you want to tell people you're just hanging out with your significant other, I will accept that responsibility at this time of the year. That's what I'm here for. You know, other podcasters, they're not doing that. They're just throwing out some content, but not me. I'm here. I'm here to help you in many ways through your life. I know. I don't like to call myself a hero, but if you wanted to call me a hero, I would not argue. All right, so now that I've gotten all of our witty banter out of the way, and I know you're dying to hear the review for this film, let's get into it again. This is entitled Heart Eyes and directed by Josh Rubin. I have seen one of his other films, Werewolves Within, a nice little werewolf comedy movie. If you haven't seen that, it's an enjoyable little movie, which might tip my hand as far as what I'm going to say about this movie. But as always, I do have to over-explain a couple of things here. I am going to give you a spoiler-free review, as well as a spoiler-free plot synopsis. Now, in this plot synopsis, I have hidden two movie quotes from movies that are either adjacent to this film or share a little DNA. And if you can identify those movies and let me know through the various means that I have given you earlier in the show, I will give you a point for each one that you get right. At the end of the month, I add up all the points, and whoever wins gets to pick a movie for me to review next month. Or if you're just listening from time to time and just want to play along, you can do that as well. I don't mind that. I know it seems a bit uncool, but that's really everybody's favorite time of the week, and that is to be uncool with Chris. Okay, now that I've gotten all of that out of the way, let's talk about Heart Eyes. We open the film with a young couple in a vineyard. They're trying to stage the perfect marriage proposal to impress all of you social media addicts out there. Unfortunately for this couple, they have been targeted by the Valentine's Day serial killer called the Heart Eyes Killer. And in a bit of good news, bad news for this young couple, the masked maniac saves them from an expensive wedding and an inevitable divorce. However, he does this by brutally dispatching with them. Then we meet Allie, played by Olivia Holt, and she is getting coffee with her bestie, Monica, played by Gigi Zambato. Hope I'm saying that right. When Allie has that rom-com moment where she meets that guy, Jay, played by Mason Gooding, a handsome visitor from out of town. Unfortunately for Allie, she can't quite make this love connection because she has to rush off to her job. where she works for an ad agency with her overbearing boss, who comes in to tell Allie that she is bringing in someone to help her with this massive campaign that they're working on. And in classic romantic comedy style, this person is none other than Jay. Now, the pair go out for a business dinner on the most romantic night of the year, of course, Valentine's Day, where the heart-eye killer mistakes them for an actual couple, proceeds to share a lovely poem. Roses are red, violets are blue, one is dead, and so are you. Hint, hint. And then this killer stalks them the rest of the night, brutally murdering any and all that stand in the way. Now, will Allie survive this vicious Valentine villain's rampage and be able to tell Jay her true feelings by saying something like, I love him for the man he wants to be, and I love him for the man he almost is? Or will the heart-eyed killer end this storybook romance and then be revealed to be a bitter, cynical, yet handsome and world-famous podcaster? Well, I am not going to answer any of those questions and spoil this movie for you, but I am going to give you the best review for Heart Eyes in all the podcast universe, nay, in all of the universe. If you are new to the show or haven't listened in a while, I do break my reviews down into 3 segments: the good, the bad, and the nitpicky. The good are the things that work for me in the movie. The bad, obviously things that don't. And the nitpicky, these are things that are neither good nor bad, sometimes Hollywoodisms or sometimes silly things in these movies that my weird little brain picks up on that make me laugh, and I'm going to share them with you to try to make you laugh. Because if there's one thing I love to do in this world, that is to make people laugh. Hopefully I am succeeding with this show. Please leave a review or let me know one way or the other. It does get a tad lonely in this room behind my fort of blankets. So let's move into the good of Heart Eyes. I'm going to start with the cast and pretty much the main 2 in the film. I'll probably talk a little bit about some of the supporting cast, but mainly I'm going to stick to the stars of this movie, especially Olivia Holt. I think she carries this movie all the way through it. She can balance the romantic comedy side of this movie with the final girl slasher horror movie vibe that we're going through in this film as well. I was really impressed with her performance. I have to say, going into this movie, I did not have high expectations. I just thought it might be a fun little slasher movie to watch. And I'll be honest with you, going into a weekend where there aren't any major releases, if there is a horror movie out, I'm probably going to go see that first. That's just where my loyalty lies. But at any rate, I just really didn't have high expectations for this movie. And with Olivia Holt, I really wasn't familiar with her. I know she's in another movie that was actually written by, I think, the writer of this movie, Totally Killer. She plays the younger version of the hero's mom in that movie. But at any rate, that's the only thing I recognize her from. So I didn't know what kind of performance I was going to get. And again, I think she sells it all the way through this movie. She can handle the comedic moments. She has good timing with her co-star that we'll get to in a minute. But as I mentioned, when she has to be the badass and stand up to the serial killer, she can do that as well. Except she does have this reoccurring gags where she does get violently ill when she sees blood. So that appears a couple of times in this movie. That was pretty funny. But overall, I think she really carries this movie. And I was extremely impressed with her performance. I was not expecting it in this movie. She has great chemistry with her co-star, Mason Gooding. Now, I did recognize him because he was in the last 2 Scream movies, so he was a familiar face. But he does, again, have good chemistry with Olivia Holt. You really buy into them as this romantic comedy-style couple, because that's what this movie is sort of merging together, a slasher with a rom-com. So you kind of buy into that. You buy into his sort of being this hopeless romantic after what he's been through in his life, and he's trying to win Olivia Holt over because she's really bitter. I forgot to mention she's just getting out of a relationship, so she's cynical and bitter, and she doesn't believe in love, and he's kind of the opposite. So you have that playfulness that you would expect from a romantic comedy type of movie inserted into this slasher movie, and they pull that off very well. And then when it comes time to deal with the killer, he sort of plays kind of a hero, but also kind of gets in trouble as well. There's a few times where he tries to save her, but she has to come back and save him. So it's a good interplay between the two. I think they have good comedic timing. And as I mentioned, they really buy into these characters. You learn a lot about them through this movie, or at least enough that you actually care about them. It's one of those horror movies where you don't want anything bad to happen to anybody in the cast. You're really rooting for them. Usually in a slasher movie, it's the other way around. You're rooting for the killer. You just want all these obnoxious people to meet their demise. But in this one, you're actually rooting for this couple and hoping that they can survive this horrific Valentine's Day. And really, what Valentine's Day isn't horrific? Let's see. As I mentioned, they pretty much carry this movie. I mentioned the best friend again, and we're going to get into some things here momentarily, but that fits into the tropey romantic comedy best friend. You know, they always have that sidekick who's always kind of over the top and stuff like that. And Gigi Zimbardo, she kind of embodies that. The only other really performances that kind of stand out to me were Jordana Brewster and Devon Sawa. They play police detectives. Of course, Jordana Brewster, she was in one of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remakes or sequel to one of those remakes anyway. And of course, I mean, Devon Sawa, he was in one of my favorite horror movies. That would be Final Destination. I absolutely love that movie. So it was cool to see him in these films, and they get their moments to shine. They play sort of bumbling detectives, as it were. They're not the brightest police officers in the horror movies. They kind of fall right into that cliche, but they do a good enough job where they add some levity to the film. And then they do have to get serious when they have to tangle with the Heart Eye Killer. And I don't really see a need to go too far because, like I said, Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding, they're the main stars of this film, and they're the ones you follow through the whole movie. So their performances are the most important, and they do a very good job of holding this movie together. Moving into the next positive, and I think this kind of goes hand in hand with the direction and the concept of this film. As I mentioned, it is sort of a mashing together of a romantic comedy with a slasher film. And to the movie's credit, while it does stay within the tropiness of both sides of those genres, it doesn't shortcut either side. Like the romantic comedy, it feels very much like a romantic. If you'd have taken out all of the killer and slasher scenes and just cut this together as a romantic comedy, it would flow like your typical romantic comedy. Again, Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding, they have such good chemistry together. You buy their performances, but they have sort of the cute meetup at the coffee shop, and then they have this moment where at the dinner they run into Olivia Holt's ex-boyfriend, so they have to do this fake kiss to impress him, so she doesn't look like she's desperate or anything like that. So, you know, you kind of get that where one of them's like, oh, wait a minute, something's happening here. Of course, they have their moment where they, I don't want to say break up, but, you know, there's always that down moment in a rom-com where you think they're going to not see each other again, and then they get back together, stuff like that. So it really sticks with that blueprint for romantic comedies, and it sells it all the way through, and then it injects that slasher movie into the film from time to time. And that side, they don't really skimp out on that either. Again, a lot of tropes in this movie. I'm not going to lie to you. I might talk about that in the negatives, but it follows what you would expect from a slasher movie, beat for beat. You know, you got the maniacal killer in the mask, and they're able to transport around or teleport around, as it were, and appear in places and wreak havoc. This killer is pretty brutal throughout the film. There's a really good scene that I like, and when it's in movies, ever since, God, I saw the Terminator back when I was way too young. And there's that famous scene where Sarah Connor is at the police station, and you think they're safe because he's like, oh, there's 30 cops in here. No one's going to be coming in here. And of course, Arnold, I'll be back. And he drives the car through there and everything and kills all the cops. Ever since then, I've always kind of liked when a movie does that. I know it sounds weird, but because it builds you up to think that everything's safe. So you have this moment of letting your guard down only to be surprised by a killer appearing in a police station. So they do that here. I don't really think that spoils anything. I'm not telling you what's going to happen in that police station, but yeah, they can't really shake this killer throughout the movie. And I like, again, as the director, Josh Rubin, and the writers, how they were able to meld these two different genres together. I know one of the writers, they did, I think, Happy Death Day or Happy Death Day to You or whatever. That's a genre mixing one. At any rate, I've seen several of those movies over the last couple of years, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And fortunately for this one, I think they pull off the things they need to in order for this movie to work, both as that rom com and get you to buy into these characters, so that when the slasher movie part kicks in, you really are scared for them. You're really rooting for them. You're hoping that they defeat this killer. And as I mentioned, and as a fan of horror movies, I will let you know this movie does not hold back when it comes to that slasher brutality. I am going to have a gore score at the end of this review, but yeah, this one does not hold back. That was something, again, that surprised me, because you never can tell with horror movies these days if they're going to go light on the blood or if they're really going to steer into the fun of what slasher films are, and they do that very well. There's some creative kills, some unique kills, and I'm not gonna lie, there was a lot of blood and a lot of body parts getting removed from people. It's a lot of fun. I know it sounds weird to say that if you're not into horror movies, but for those of you that love slasher movies, you're gonna enjoy that part. So again, to tie the concept in with the direction, I think Josh Rubin was able to pull off this concept in a fun way that made the movie enjoyable all the way through. My final positive is this is an hour and a half. So, I mean, it's the perfect pacing for a horror movie. Again, you build up the characters well enough that I'm invested in them. I'm rooting for them. But you've got the moments of the rom-com and the slasher to where it keeps you on the edge of your seat. You're bouncing back and forth. You're laughing at one moment, and then you're scared and terrified for these young people in this film. So I think overall that they were able to tie this together, and they keep it at an hour and a half, which is perfect because it just flows nicely. You enjoy the movie, and then it's done and you leave and life goes on. So let's move into the bad or the negative of the film. I think where the movie stumbles a little bit as far as the slasher horror side is that you don't really have anybody in Allie or Olivia Holt's close circle that ends up having to deal with the hard eye killer. There are kills again throughout the movie, as I mentioned, some pretty good ones and gory ones, but it feels like this killer never gets close enough to that friend group she has or her workers or her ex-boyfriend or anything like that to make that a little more threatening, if that makes sense. I mean, obviously, it's scary that he's chasing after them, but, you know, if she ran for help from her best friend and then she gets killed or something, then it adds a little more weight to it. I wish they kind of would have pushed in that direction a little more, which kind of moves into my next negative, which is I mentioned this is tropey. It's supposed to be. I get it. I understand that. That's what made the movie fun, because you do have the horror movie elements as well as the rom-com elements that we all know and love and have seen a billion times sort of mashed together in a nice way. But at the same time, you could have maybe pushed in different directions, thought it out a little bit more or made it a little more creative to where it isn't just, oh, well, this is your typical dumb horror movie moment or even your typical dumb romantic comedy moment. And again, it's not a major negative for me in the film because, like I said, I know that's what they were going for in it. It's hard to explain without spoiling things, but I just wish they wouldn't have relied so heavily on those tropes from those genres, because it gets to be where you're like, okay, I get it. I've seen where this is, so I know where it's going to lead. And then moving into my final negative, and then the biggest negative for this movie for me, because I was bought all in for this film all the way through until we get to the end. It is a very Scream style ending. You know how you have to have the killer at every Scream movie has to be unmasked and explain themselves and tell you the whole story. And it gets a little convoluted in this movie. God, I can't spoil this, but it does something that I cannot stand in this type of movie when the killer is unmasked, as well as it doesn't really answer one major question that I had when I walked out of the movie theater about this heart eye killer activity through the years, because I didn't mention this earlier, but over the years, this masked maniac has visited several cities around the United States. So it's every Valentine's Day this killer reappears somewhere in the country. And there's some explanation that really needed to be brought forth as far as how that happened. I'm getting really close to spoiling things, so I don't want to do that. But yeah, there were some questions even through all of the monologuing by the killer that still didn't answer the things I wanted it to. And again, it just sort of falls into that Scream ending where it's just monologuing and reveals that you just go, oh God, this is lame. Just shut up and get on with it. Because you really had me all the way through. And I will say, as much as I talked about tropes and stuff, there's a moment, and I can't spoil things, where it's in this drive-in theater, and it's a really great moment. Boy, there was a moment, again, I'm talking about pushing things. I really wanted it to push further into the gore and craziness that could have happened in this moment and when this killer's at this drive-in. But at any rate, there is a reveal there where I thought, okay, if this is what the movie is, I kind of like that. It's just like, oh, that's somebody. Okay, we don't know. Okay, that's fine. I kind of liked that idea. But then, of course, we have to have the ending where it gets revealed how everything's connected, and you just go, oh, God. However, it was extremely gory at the ending, and it doesn't hold back in that department. So I kind of enjoyed that. So really, that's where the movie falls short for me, is it just doesn't quite stick the land. So let's go ahead and move into the nitpicking. Again, these are things that are neither good nor bad, just silly things I see in these movies, Hollywoodism and whatnot, make me laugh. The first one, and this is a Hollywoodism, is of course every time someone's getting chased by the killer, somebody calls and their phone goes off and the ringer starts ringing and it's some crazy tune or, the generic Apple ringtone song that comes on. And every time I see this movie, I can't help but think, and maybe y'all could answer this question for me, but how many of you out there ever have your ringtone turned up to where you could hear it? I don't think I couldn't tell you the ringtone on my phone. It's always on vibrate or silent mode. I'd never have it to where I could hear if somebody's calling me or not. So whenever I see that in a horror movie, I just think, who are these people that they have that ringer on? You're supposed to turn it all the way down. You vibrate. That's what the phone's for. You don't want to hear the ringtone, damn it. That's not what we have phones for. We have phones for irritating people on social media with all of our pictures about how amazing our lives are. Oh, there I'm getting cynical again. I'm getting cynical. All right, let's move into the next nitpicky. This one, bless this movie. They talk about paper straws in this movie and how much they hate them. It is a setup. We have, I guess it would be called Chekhov's metal straw. This metal straw makes a couple appearances in the movie only to pay off at the end. So pay attention. They only hit you in the head with it 3 or 4 times throughout the movie. But they're having this conversation about paper straws and how awful they are. And I could not agree more with anything in this world. And I know plastic straws are bad for the environment, and I wish we could find another way. But damn it, paper straws are the worst. You get halfway through your drink and they just start getting mushy at the other end. So basically, they're just useless at that point. Now you got to drink it out of the cup. You got to take the lid off, which is a plastic lid, by the way. So really, you're not saving that much of the environment by having a paper straw in your plastic lid, and probably a plastic cup. But at any rate, I almost cheered out loud when they started disparaging the paper straw. Just make them go away. Find another way. Give us all metal straws. Then we'll have a self-defense weapon with us at all time. And my last nitpick for the film, and this is another Hollywoodism, a trope at this point that I'm kind of getting tired of, and we really need to move away from it. It was funny when it first started happening in movies, especially in Deadpool, but here lately I'm just like, okay, that's enough of that. And that is to have some sort of vicious, violent scene with some sappy love song playing in the background while the scene's going on in probably slow motion. You know what I'm talking about, like Air Supply's I'm All Out of Love. I think they did that in Deadpool maybe. Well, they do the same thing here at a certain point. The killer's going on a rampage and there's this sappy love song playing. I'm just like, okay, I've seen this so many times now that it's not even amusing. I just roll my eyes like, really? You couldn't have thought of something smarter than that? So I'm here to petition Hollywood, as I know all of the executives out there listen to this show and are addicted to my voice. Please, from now on, just let's let go of that. No more slow, sappy songs to try to get a laugh in a violent scene. All right, we're done with that. I think I speak for the movie-going audience. In fact, I feel like I represent them well. So Hollywood, enough. Speaking of enough, that wraps up my in-depth review for Hard Eyes. Let me give you a gore score, since this is a horror movie, and it's the only thing on here I give a number rating to. I go up to 5, with 1 being hardly any gore and 5 being sort of a Terrifier or Terrifier 3 onslaught of gore. This one surprised me. I think I'm going to give this a 4 because there are some points in this movie. It gets pretty bloody, and you get to see, again, some body parts getting removed and some nasty things happening in machinery, and yeah, it gets pretty gross at certain times. And then to add in with Allie, she has that thing where she throws up every time she sees blood. You get, of course, an extended scene of that. So I'm going to throw that in with the gore because I think that's as disgusting as well. So overall, yeah, I'm going to give this a 4 on the gore score. You are warned if you go see this movie, there is going to be some blood and dismemberment, and it gets pretty graphic, and I am all for it. So overall, my final thoughts for Heart Eyes. I actually enjoyed this movie. You probably could tell that. I think they did a really great job of mixing the romantic comedy side with the slasher element. I was a bit concerned when I went into this movie that they were going to play it all up for laughs, and this was basically going to be a parody of both genres, but they don't. They stick true to the tropes of each side. They don't hold back with the horror. As I mentioned, it has a lot of blood and a lot of gore and some creative kills, and you're actually scared of this killer, and you are worried for your heroes because you buy in from the romantic comedy side of things, of this budding relationship between Allie and Jay. I think the performances, especially Olivia Holt, they just hold this movie together. It moves at a breakneck pace, hour and a half. Like I said, that is the perfect timing for a horror movie. So overall, I'm going to recommend going to see this in a movie theater. I don't think it's amazing or brilliant, but I think it's a good time. It kind of reminds me of Companion from last week. It was an enjoyable ride. It hits the horror elements right. It has a few laughs, and you really enjoy the characters and their performances. So yeah, definitely check out Heart Eyes in the movie theaters. If you don't, whenever it comes out on streaming, I would highly recommend watching it on that as well, so you don't miss out. It's a good movie, especially if you're a horror movie fan. You'll have some fun with it. And if you are a cynical, bitter human being like this podcast host, and it's Valentine's Day, it's a good movie to watch because you can enjoy those happy couples meeting their demise. Yes. Anyway. If you have reached this point in the podcast, then I must have done something right. And if I did, please, again, follow the show, rate it, review it, share it with your friends, your family members, your enemies, your masked killers. I don't care. Just get someone to listen. I would greatly appreciate it. Let's see, on my next episode, I will have a midweek or end of the week episode, my streaming surprise episode. Actually, I think this one might be my review for the contest winner for January. They have let me know what they want me to watch. I'm excited. It's a movie I haven't seen before, so it should be fun. I might do that this week. In fact, unless something amazing drops on a streaming platform, I'm 99% certain that's the one I'm going to do. But either way, you want to come back and keep up with that and keep up with the contest as well. Again, you get points for everyone you get right, and maybe next month you can get to pick which movie I watch. Or if you just want to play from time to time and let me know you're out there, I appreciate that. I also appreciate you listening to my show. I tell everyone I know I got the smartest and sexiest audience members in all the podcast universe, and you never fail to live up to those high standards. As you are traveling around on this blue and green ball bouncing through the cosmos, I need you to do one thing for me. Go out there and do that voodoo that you do so well.
Punch it!